if you could picture the average of the wealthy world, 1.3 billion of us consume about 50 megawatt hours, and we make about $50,000 per person. 50 megawatt hours per capita, $50,000 per capita. That's the average of the wealthy world annually. The U.S. is higher than that. Okay, 50-50. That's kind of convenient. At the end of every year, I tear apart a bunch of data for several weeks. It's my fun. And so I kind of was working on population data, economic data, and energy data at the end of last year. And this is cool, conveniently cool, 50-50.
Yep.
All right, sticks in your head, 50-50. 7 billion other people in the world are below that, some way below it. Now, it's not, well, there's a bunch of folks here, and then there's some here, and then here. It's a complete continuum, all right? But for convenience sake, there's 4 billion people emerging. You know, we have 50 megawatt hours, they have 5 or 3 or 1. And proportionally about $1,000 to $5,000 per capita.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
You know, think about that. That's a couple cups of Starbucks or something a day.
Yep.
And then as you come up through that, there's the developing world, and then the developed world. Lumped all at 7 billion people, and they're stuck. They're kind of stuck here. They haven't moved much. They're getting a little bit more. While the wealthy world, we consume more energy, and we're getting a lot wealthier. Now, we're consuming less energy per unit wealth, which is cool. That curve is flattening.
That's an efficiency.
Really cool.
Yeah, that's great.
In fact,
that's the pattern of real economic development,
it's
right?
Awesome.
More for less.
It's awesome.
Right.
Efficiency.
So that's also, that's also an indicator of the utility of pursuing abundance, because it turns out that if you pursue abundance intelligently, you produce a innovative environment that allows us to extract far more from less.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you plateau. And some of it is, well, you don't need any more stuff. You know, there's that reality. But we're making better things, more efficient things. There's a rebound effect. An economist back in the 1800s, Jevons, showed, well, if you get a really nice, efficient, let's call it a refrigerator, and you're using a lot less energy and it doesn't cost as much, you're going to get 2.
Right.
And we do.
Right.
2 cars, 2 TVs.
Right.
20 pair of blue jeans. I'm literally not exaggerating. Instead of, I just need 2 or 3.
You know, the C40 consortium, the green advocates on the municipal side, have posited that in order for us to reach net zero effectively, there's 40 of the world's biggest cities are part of this consortium.
Yeah.
We are only going to be allowed 3 articles of clothing a year.
Yeah.
Right. 95% reduction in automobile ownership, too, because you don't need a car to do whatever the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
that's a vision of scarcity. But your point fundamentally is that the pursuit of scarcity will exacerbate environmental catastrophe.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And the removal of choice. And basic human freedoms and liberties.
And opportunity and the ability to live.
Let's kind of set the idea that we could tell people what they can do aside for a second. Even in places that tell people what they can do. I see behind me the Soviet Union poster. I went there in 82 for 3 weeks when it was still the Soviet Union. The Cold War was on. We were behind the Iron Curtain, and I was out of college, and it left a huge impression on me. I saw what it was like to live without liberty.
In a command economy.
It was very intense. And I went out when I shouldn't at night from hotels and met with young people my age, 22, 23, invincible. I'll never erase. These are embedded forever. These are memories that are embedded forever of the look in young people's eyes who are now in their 60s, if they're still here. So what that system does, it doesn't work. You can't tell people that.
Spain's going to make it work.
How's that working?
Yeah,
we'll eventually come back there. But getting back, kind of this dialogue, energy, economies, and that gives you the wherewithal to invest in cleaning up environments. And we see that in all sorts of different.
Right, and that final 50, that's the bottom half of the world?
Well, no.
Oh, okay.
So you say, okay, here we are with this continuum. And there's the 50-50. And I asked myself the question, why are we considering light bulbs and mud huts, which I've done, electrified? That the world organizations say, well, that's electrified. No, that's a light bulb and a mud hut.
Right.
It's more than they had. They can read at night.
Yeah.
Etc. It's a start. If we had a light bulb and a mud hut here, we'd call it a brownout, Jordan. We would be in a brownout situation. We'd be one lamp. So what would it take really to lift 7 billion people in various stages to 50 megawatts hours and $50,000? So I ran the numbers. And then by when? So it turns out the world today, all in, let's call it primary energy consumption. These are the fundamental inputs we've been talking about. Biomass, coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, solar, wind, hydro, big dams, and waves and tides, potentially all other this little teeny thing today. So these are what come into the system. I didn't say electricity. You have to make electricity. Electricity is not primary energy. We make it. So the things that make electricity, if you look across the world today, all in, we consume about 620 exajoules of energy. That means nothing to anybody. What's an exajoule? It's a big number, okay? 620 exajoules powers 8.3 billion people to varying levels. Just take it as 620 something, some unit. To lift everybody up to 50-50 would take almost 3 times that, almost 1,800 exajoules. For the oil and gas people, that's about 1,800 trillion cubic feet of gas a year equivalent. Other units of energy measurement that are used. Tripling though, so 3x. Now, that's not scarcity. That's not saying, hey, we're running out. Everybody's got to conserve. You can only have 1 pair of shoes and 2 pair of clothing. No, that's saying we've got to find out how to make triple our energy, our primary energy in the world. Is it there? Some worry about that. Well, yes. The answer is there's a lot of energy in the world. It's in a variety of forms. But the density, here's where density comes back in. If I'm going to make another 1,200 exajoules or up to 1,800, I've got to use the densest forms of energy. That little uranium pellet, uranium oxides, thorium, another radioactive element. These are both fission inputs. And in the next period of time, we're not that far away from fusion working, not commercial yet, but fusion, that's hydrogen. It's a pretty common thing. So we've got to get our heads around this idea that to literally lift the world out of poverty and all the good things that come from that, we got to go dense, dense, dense. You're not going to be doing it with low density forms of energy. There'll be good pieces of that portfolio, the optionality in energy. I don't mind solar and wind where it's sunny and windy. You got a lot of sun here. Use it, in places that make sense. It's a very efficient use of the sun when you've got great sun. You're in the lower latitudes, you don't have many clouds, winter doesn't happen much, That's a pretty good use of sun, and that use is called capacity factor. So if I've got 100 units of sun and I can make it generate 30 units throughout the year, that's a 30% capacity factor, and that's pretty good for solar. Nuclear, 90% or more capacity factor. Nuclear is always on.